The arrival of the void around Earth's outer defense perimeter suddenly erupted with light. Not the gentle glow of distant stars, but the harsh, metallic brilliance of 1,000 warships dropping out of hyperspace. The Corinthian Empire had arrived, and they had brought enough firepower to crack a planet. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator's Edge, watching the blue-green world rotate peacefully below. His 4 arms crossed behind his back, each hand gripping a ceremonial blade. The Carathians were a warrior race, bred for conquest, and today would add another victory to their endless campaign across the galaxy. "Deploy the fleet in attack formation," Vextar commanded, his voice carrying the authority of 100 conquered worlds. These humans will learn what happens when they refuse the Empire's generous offer of submission. The massive fleet spread across space like a metal plague. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, cruisers bristling with particle cannons, and fighters swarming like angry insects. Each ship bore the crimson crest of the Corinthian Empire, a symbol that had made entire star systems surrender without firing a shot. But Earth was different. 3 months ago, the Empire had sent an ultimatum: join the Empire or face destruction. The human response had been ... peculiar. Not defiance, not surrender, but a simple message: we decline your offer. Please reconsider your position. Vextar had laughed at the audacity. Humans were a young species, barely 2 centuries into space travel. They had no great fleet, no mighty weapons, no vast empire. They were insects pretending to be dragons. The communications officer, a young Corinthian with nervous energy, spoke. "Up, Admiral. We're detecting movement from the human homeworld." "They're sending something." Vextar's mandibles clicked with amusement. "Finally, show me their pathetic fleet." The view screen flickered to life, showing the vast expanse of space between Earth and the Corinthian armada. Vextar expected to see hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. Human desperation made manifest in metal and plasma. Instead, he saw one ship, a single vessel, no larger than a Corinthian cruiser, drifted toward them. It wasn't sleek like the racing ships of the Vespian Republic, nor heavily armored like the battleships of the Titan Confederacy. It looked ... ordinary, almost mundane. Its hull was a simple grey, unmarked except for a single word painted in white letters: Wanderer. The bridge fell silent. Even the constant hum of the ship's systems seemed to pause. "That's it?" Vex asked, his voice uncertain for the first time in decades. "Sensors confirm, Admiral. One ship, minimal energy signatures, no escort vessels detected." Vextar's 4 eyes narrowed. This had to be a trick. No species would send a single ship against the Empire's finest fleet. It was either a decoy, a distraction, or an act of cosmic stupidity. "Open a channel to the human vessel," he ordered. The screen split, showing the Wanderer alongside a communication window. A human face appeared, calm and composed. It was a woman, perhaps in her 40s, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that seemed to hold the depth of space itself. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Corinthian Empire," he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "You will surrender immediately, or we will destroy you and proceed to subjugate your world." The human woman smiled, and it wasn't the expression of someone facing certain death. It was the smile of someone who knew something important. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Wanderer," she replied. "I'm here to respectfully ask you to reconsider your position." Vextar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of growing irritation. "You send one ship against 1,000. This is either madness or surrender. Which is it? Neither, Sarah said simply. This is a demonstration. Before Vextar could respond, the Wanderer moved, but it didn't move like any ship he had ever seen. Instead of accelerating forward or turning, it simply ... shifted. One moment it was 1,000 kilometers away, the next it was alongside the Dominator's edge, having crossed the distance without any visible means of propulsion. The bridge erupted in chaos. Tactical officers shouted readings that made no sense. The Wanderer hadn't used engines, hadn't bent space, hadn't done anything that registered on their sensors. It had simply been in one place, then another. Impossible, Vextar breathed. Your sensors are correct. Sarah's voice came through the cum. We didn't move through space. We moved through something else entirely. The Wanderer shifted again, this time appearing on the other side of the fleet. Then it was above them, then below. Each movement was instantaneous, defying every law of physics that the Korathians understood. What are you? Vextar demanded. Where? What happens when a species learns to think differently? Sarah replied. Your empire conquers through force, through overwhelming numbers and superior firepower. You understand war, but you don't understand evolution. The Wanderer suddenly appeared in the center of the Korathian formation, surrounded by 100 warships. Every weapon in the fleet was trained on it, yet somehow Vextar knew that conventional weapons would be useless. Humanity faced extinction. Twice, Sarah continued, her voice calm despite being surrounded by enough firepower to vaporize a moon. The first time was our own doing. Climate change, resource depletion, war. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we learned to work together. Wanderer began to spin, slowly at first, then faster. As it spun, space around it seemed to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. The second time was when we reached for the stars and discovered we weren't alone. We found the ruins of a dozen civilizations, all destroyed by forces beyond their control. We realized that survival wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about being the most adaptable. The spinning intensified, and the Wanderer began to fade in and out of existence. One moment it was solid, the next it was translucent, as if it existed in multiple realities at once. You see, Admiral, while your empire was conquering worlds, we were conquering dimensions. While you were building bigger weapons, we were learning to step outside the universe itself. Vextar's tactical officer was screaming readings that made no sense. The Wanderer was registering on sensors as being in 17 different locations simultaneously, existing in states that shouldn't be possible. This is impossible, Vextar repeated, but his voice had lost its authority. For the first time in his military career, he was facing something completely outside his understanding. Your word impossible assumes that reality has fixed rules, Sarah said. But reality is much more flexible than you think. We didn't build faster engines or better weapons. We learned to ask better questions. The Wanderer suddenly stopped spinning and became solid again. But now it was different. Where before it had been ordinary, now it seemed to pulse with potential energy, as if it contained the power of a star. The question isn't whether you can destroy us, Sarah continued. The question is whether you can destroy something that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Can you fire at a target that's both here and not here? Can you conquer a species that doesn't play by your rules? Vextar stared at the view screen, his mind racing. The Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds by following a simple formula: assess the enemy's strength, bring superior force, crush all resistance. But how do you fight an enemy that exists outside the battlefield entirely? What do you want? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We want what we've always wanted, Sarah replied, to be left alone to continue our journey. We're not conquerors, Admiral. We're explorers. We're wanderers. And we've learned that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than anyone imagined. The wanderer began to fade again, becoming translucent, but instead of disappearing, it began to multiply. One ship became 2, then 4, then 8. Each copy was identical, each one just as real as the original. This is what happens when a species refuses to accept limitations, Sarah said, her voice now coming from multiple sources. We don't fight your battles, we transcend them. Vextar's fleet, the pride of the Corinthian Empire, suddenly seemed very small and very primitive. They were insects trying to comprehend the flight of eagles. Choose carefully, Admiral, all the Sarahs said in unison. You can continue your conquest and learn what happens when you attack something that exists in 17 dimensions at once. Or you can accept that some species have evolved beyond your understanding. The multiple wanderers began to circle the fleet, moving through space like sharks through water. Each one was a reminder that humanity had found a path the Empire couldn't follow, had discovered secrets the Empire couldn't understand. Vextar stood in silence, staring at the impossible sight before him. For the first time in his career, he was truly afraid, not of death, but of the unknown, of the possibility that everything he thought he knew about the universe was wrong. The demonstration was far from over. The revelation, the multiple wanderers continued their impossible dance around the Corinthian fleet, each one a testament to humanity's refusal to accept the universe's apparent limitations. Admiral Vextar watched in growing horror as his sensors tried to make sense of readings that defied every principle of physics he understood. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. We're detecting quantum fluctuations across 17 different dimensional frequencies. The human vessel isn't just moving through space, it's moving through reality itself. Vextar's forehands clenched into fists. In his 2 centuries of military service, he had never encountered anything like this. The Empire's strength had always been absolute. Superior numbers, advanced technology, and the will to use both without hesitation. But how do you fight an enemy that exists in multiple dimensions? Explain yourself, human, he demanded, his voice carrying across the void. To all the wanderers simultaneously, Sarah's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, as if reality itself was speaking. 50 years ago, we discovered something your empire missed. Something that changes everything about how we understand existence itself. One of the wanderers moved closer to the Dominator's edge, close enough that Vextar could see details on its hull. What he had initially taken for simple grey plating was actually covered in equations, mathematical formulas that seemed to shift and change as he watched. We call it the quantum consciousness principle, Sarah continued. The idea that consciousness doesn't just observe reality, participates in creating it. Every sentient being is constantly collapsing probability waves, choosing which version of reality becomes real through the simple act of observation. The wanderer began to phase in and out of existence, becoming more translucent with each pulse. Most species discover this principle and use it to build better computers or more efficient engines. They think of it as a tool to be exploited. And you, Vextar asked, though he dreaded the answer. We realized that if consciousness shapes reality, then changing consciousness changes everything. We didn't build a faster ship, Admiral. We built a ship that exists in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously present in multiple probability states, until we choose which one to collapse into reality. The implications hit Vexter like a physical blow. You're saying you can choose what's real, within certain parameters, yes. The Wanderer isn't just a ship, it's a probability engine. It exists in multiple quantum states simultaneously, and I can collapse those states into whatever configuration serves our purpose. To demonstrate, the Wanderer suddenly appeared inside the Dominator's Edge's bridge, its hull occupying the same space as the command station without causing any apparent damage. Vextar and his crew found themselves standing inside the human vessel, looking out at their own ship through the Wanderer's viewports. "This is impossible," Vextar whispered, reaching out to touch the Wanderer's wall. His hand passed through. "It likes smoke. Only if you insist on thinking in terms of single-dimensional reality," Sarah replied. Her voice now came from a figure materializing beside him, not solid, but more real than the ghostly ship around them. "We exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Your ship, your crew, even you yourself, you're all just probability patterns from our perspective." The ghostly Sarah gestured toward the viewports, where the Corinthian fleet was visible in all its terrible glory. "Your empire conquered worlds by accepting the universe's rules, and learning to exploit them more efficiently than your enemies. But we rejected the rules entirely. What do you want from us?" Vextar demanded. "If you can do this, why not simply eliminate us?" Sarah's expression grew sad, because elimination is a single-dimensional solution. "We could collapse your probability states into non-existence, yes. But that would make us no different from you imposing our will through superior force." The Wanderer began to fade from the bridge, and Vextar found himself back in his own command center. But now he could see the mathematical equations covering every surface, could hear the whispered voices of probability itself. "We're offering you a choice," Sarah continued, her voice now coming from the communication system. "Continue your conquest and learn what happens when you attack something that exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Or consider the possibility that there are forms of existence beyond your current understanding." Vextar, second-in-command, Commander Vexenal, stepped forward. "Admiral, our weapons are useless against this. Whatever it is, we can't target something that doesn't exist in a fixed location." "Actually, you can." Sarah's voice carried a hint of amusement. "But you'd have to fundamentally change how you think about targeting. Instead of aiming at where we are, you'd have to aim at where we might be across multiple probability states. It's possible, but it would require abandoning everything you think you know about combat." The multiple Wanderers began to converge, merging back into a single vessel. But this time, the ship looked different. Where before it had been ordinary, now it seemed to contain the light of stars, as if galaxies were spinning within its hull. "This is what we've become," Sarah said. "Not conquerors, but explorers of possibility itself. We don't fight wars, we transcend them. We don't destroy enemies, we offer them new ways of thinking." Vextar stared at the transformed ship, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "You're saying we could learn to do this? Every species has the potential. Consciousness is universal. But it requires giving up the illusion of control, accepting that reality is far more flexible than it appears." The Wanderer began to spin again, and space around it started to ripple. "I'm going to show you something that will either inspire you or terrify you, probably both." The ship's spinning intensified, and suddenly the entire region of space around Earth began to change. Stars shifted position, nebulae rearranged themselves, and for a moment, Vextar could see the universe as it truly was, not a collection of fixed objects, but a vast web of interconnected possibilities. This is the universe as we see it now. Sarah's voice came from everywhere at once. Not a battleground to be conquered, but a garden to be explored. Every star is a story, every planet a possibility, every species a unique way of understanding existence. The vision faded, leaving the Corinthian fleet floating in normal space. But something had changed. The crew members were looking at each other with new eyes, seeing themselves not as conquerors, but as explorers who had lost their way. "We're leaving now," Sarah announced, "but not because we're fleeing. Because we have places to go, realities to explore. The universe is far larger than any of us imagined." The wanderer began to fade, becoming translucent once more. "If you choose to follow us, you'll have to abandon your ships, your empire, your old way of thinking. But you'll gain something infinitely more valuable, the ability to explore existence itself." "And if we refuse," Vextar asked, "then you continue as you are. But you'll always know that there are species out there who have transcended everything you thought was possible. You'll spend the rest of your existence wondering what you could have become." The wanderer was barely visible now, more concept than object. "The choice is yours, Admiral. But choose quickly. Reality is about to shift, and you'll need to decide which version of it you want to experience." Vextar looked around his bridge, at his crew, at the vast fleet that had been his. Pride and joy. Suddenly, it all seemed very small and very limiting. "How do we follow you?" he asked. "You don't follow us." Sarah's voice was fading along with her ship. "You become us. Stop thinking of yourself as a conqueror and start thinking of yourself as an explorer. Stop trying to control reality and start learning to dance with it." The wanderer disappeared completely, leaving only empty space and a communication frequency that broadcast across the galaxy. To all species who dream of something more, the universe is waiting. Evolution is not about survival of the fittest. It's about survival of the most adaptable, and adaptation begins with consciousness. Vextar stood in silence for a long moment, staring at the empty space where the impossible ship had been. Around him, his crew waited for orders that would never come. The old orders, the ones that made sense in a universe of fixed rules and limited possibilities. "Stand down, all weapons," he said finally. "Signal the fleet to return to base." "Sir," Commander Vexanal asked, "what about the conquest?" Vextar turned to face his crew, and for the first time in his career, he smiled. "There's nothing here to conquer, Commander. Only something to learn from." He looked out at Earth, spinning peacefully in the void, and wondered what other impossibilities might be waiting out there in the vast garden of existence. The Corinthian Empire had come to conquer a world. Instead, they had discovered that the universe was far stranger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. And somewhere in the space between realities, the wanderer continued its eternal journey, carrying the dreams of a species that refused to accept limitations. The demonstration was complete. Humanity had shown the galaxy that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to become something entirely new. And in the depths of space, other species began to wonder what they might become if they stopped fighting the universe and started dancing with it instead. Asterisk.